Hello there, my name is Barry Smith and I am a librarian here in Louth Library Services. Today we are here to introduce an exciting new element to Louth County Council's Decade of Centenaries programme. The programme, as you know, has been running from 2012 and will run until 2023. The Culture Division at the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts, Gaeltacht, Sports and Media has responsibility for the coordination of events. The Decade of Centenaries programme is and has been wide-ranging and has run some fantastic events thus far. Its aim is to promote a deeper understanding of our oftentimes complex history during the struggle for independence, the Civil War, the foundation of the state and partition. It can all get pretty confusing. And to that end, Louth County Council has sought out and found our very own historian in residence, Dr Tommy Tormey, who joins me here today. He's teamed up with us to explore, research and present elements of Louth's history during this period. Dr Tormey holds an MA in military history from Louth University and a PhD from Trinity College Dublin on the War of Independence in Dublin and Roscommon. So Tommy, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Barry. I'm looking forward to getting more dug into the role over the coming weeks and really I suppose what I'll be trying to do is trying to match what's going on nationally and my knowledge of that to little events and small, really small local events that happen on the ground in Louth, to let local people in Louth have a good idea of how their story relates to the national story.
Yeah, and you're no stranger to this neck of the woods. You were up here a couple of years ago giving another history talk, weren't you?
That's right, yeah. I gave a talk on the Solahadbeg ambush at the 2019 Louth Festival of History, and I really enjoyed it. And I made some great contributions from the crowd, including people talking about relations who were involved in events on the RIC side in the 1916 Rising. So I look forward to more engagement from the public.
Yeah, very good. So tell us, to those who don't know and are curious, what does a historian in residence actually do? And what will that look like in terms of what they can expect to see or hear coming from us?
Well, I suppose I have three roles here. Firstly is to try and bring in some other historians to talk about events which I think will provide good background knowledge for people in Louth relating to the period. The second then is to produce outputs relating about local events, which relate to local events, as I said, to the national events. And I'm going to do that principally, I think, in two ways. One would be through blog posts that will be available through Louth County Council website and through short podcasts where I'll try to talk to other subject matter experts about particular events or threads of the revolutionary period. So we can unpick the complexities that you talked about by looking at different threads of the revolution, both nationally and locally.
Very good. And I suppose, tell us a little bit about yourself. What are your, I alluded there to your qualifications, but what are your research interests?
Well, my research interests probably come in four broad topics. I'm interested in generally in kind of wars, but not really so much conventional wars, so irregular wars. So anything from our own War of Independence to the war in Iraq after the invasion was over, the troubles in the north, the French in Algeria, things like that. And I kind of look at those. I try to look at those topics from three angles, really. I look at them from a military history point of view, so the actual fighting and how people fight, and then the bad stuff, so people getting injured, killed, maimed, the trauma that they experience. On top of that, I don't just look at that as an isolated phenomenon. I always look at it as a kind of a political event, as well as just there's elements of tragedy, there's elements of triumph, but I'd also look at it as a political event. So people are often trying to affect political change by getting involved in these things. So I try to look at it from that point of view, and how politics changes how people behave and how they behave in order to change politics. And then the other interest I have then is what I broadly call activism, which kind of plugs into all of those ideas. So it's almost the various organizations as social organizations full of individual people and how the individual people act. Now, I'm not a sociologist, but I do try to look at, these groups of people. So in people getting involved, why do they get involved? How involved are they? If you join the Irish Volunteers in Drogheda in 1917, how involved are you in 1921 when the War of Independence rolls around? If you're involved in 1921 when the War of Independence rolls around, how involved are you on either side of the Civil War? What's your attitude to the treaty say? And then how, it's to some extent, how do you adjust when all of that's over in 1923? So that's broadly the kind of, at a more detailed level, what I'm interested in.
Yeah, so fairly wide ranging, like we said.
Yeah, it's fairly wide ranging, and that's why I like to kind of zone in on particular topics, because if when you zone in on the topic, the knowledge of one aspect of the topic feeds into the other. Yeah. Whereas if you, as I've found myself, if you try to look at one aspect of something and you take loads of topics as a case study, the way you're selecting the topics you're looking at can be kind of warped. Because if say you decide to analyze ambushes, you look at ambushes, say in Algeria and in the Irish War of Independence, it's hard to comment on those ambushes without the full context. You won't get that full context without examining all the aspects of conflict.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. So that'll be my perspective. So that's basically. So I try to, when I pick a particular historical topic, I try to engage with it at various levels. So you can, so I have, and people will see this hopefully in the blogs, I have loads of research done into really high level sources. So memos that the British cabinet were looking at, Lloyd George's letters, the letters of Walter Long, who the man who drew the border effectively in the Government of Ireland Act. And then at the same time, the pensions files or the medal application files of ordinary activists who are involved on the ground in Dublin and Roscommon, as I've done up to now, and Louth, as I'll be doing over the coming weeks.
Sounds great. And so the first of our events will be coming up now in a couple of weeks. So the 16th of June, you'll be giving a talk. Do you want to tell us, give us a little taster of that?
Yeah, what the talk will centre around Bernard O'Hanlon, who is a member of the IRA in Dublin in 1921, or who was a member of the IRA in Dublin in 1921, excuse me. And Bernard was shot during an ambush that's quite well known. It's called the Battle of Brunswick Street, which is probably a bit of an exaggeration, but it was a fairly major event in Dublin on the 14th of March, 1921. There was lots of other stuff going on in Dublin that day, so I'll hopefully tie a bit of the talk into that. Also, that event has resonated both through the histories of the War of Independence in Dublin and the country more broadly, and even into our own time, because it ties into the whole stuff about the Forgotten 10, which most people, I think, a lot of people over 30 will remember the reinterment of the Forgotten 10 in the early noughties. And then the other side of that, then I will be talking about, Bernard O'Hanlon was from Dundalk, and there is a road named after him there. So I'll be having a quick chat about that. And I think one of the reasons I wanted to start on that is because I think it's partly because obviously it's something I've quite a good knowledge of from having researched before, but also I kind of wanted to plug two elements of a local story. So it's the local story in Dublin, and it's a local story in Dundalk. And I think it kind of knits the work I'm going to do for yourselves and Louth County Council together quite well, because it reminds us that it's not just although the local stories are important, the local stories are subsets of a national story. And they make no sense without the national story. And often how people experience something like the War of Independence is they may remember somebody getting shot down the road, but they also may remember somebody they knew, getting shot in Cork or being involved in something in Dublin. Or, I mean, a well-known event in Louth, of course, is the events in North King Street during the Rising, where the Louth dairy was targeted by members of the British Army, and there were people from Dundalk shot, and there were other people from Dundalk or from Louth or with Louth connections, born to Louth parents who died in that event. So, and a lot of people, I'd say, if you were to ask people in the 1930s in Louth, what do they remember about the 1916 Rising? It may have actually just been that, that so-and-so didn't, the papers didn't arrive for a day or two, but so-and-so from down the road that I knew was killed. So I think it to remind people that the local doesn't happen in isolation. It feeds into a national story. I think it's a good way to provide that backdrop from the opening.
Yeah, brilliant. Look, Tommy, that all sounds fantastic, and really excited to see what you put out. And as I said, just to give us just to show us what Louth is getting up to during this time, and as you said a couple of times there, to tie it back into what was happening nationally, because you can't look at either in isolation. So thanks very much for having a quick chat to us here, and we'll be seeing you shortly. So looking forward to the 16th of June.
Good stuff, Barry. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Tommy.